Welcome to the Good Friday service. This service has been going on over 25 years and is a service that is student-led from the greeters to the band, the speakers, and the artwork.
Tonight you will hear 7 of our peers share their stories of how God has been at work in their lives and talk about Jesus' last words on the cross.
All of us students who are a part of this service represent different communities, schools, and churches.
We want tonight to be a pause of silence throughout the Cedar Valley and a moment of oneness at the cross.
We believe that everyone has a story to share and that God is at work in everyone's lives. Tonight is one opportunity to hear from a few high school seniors, but we know that God provides many opportunities for all of us to share our stories. Through hearing these stories, we hope that you will connect with God's story by hearing where your story and their story meet.
Good Friday is about the crucifixion and sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross because of God's great love for redeeming us, His people.
Tonight you will see each of the speakers leave a sign at the foot of the cross. They are leaving their doubt, their lack of faith, their mistrust, the one thing that prevents them from experiencing peace, hope, and love.
What is that one thing that you need to leave here tonight?
What is something you need to let go of and leave at the foot of the cross?
What needs to end so that God can begin something new in your life?
Jesus. You can take a seat.
Father, forgive them.
Forgive them.
Forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing.
For they do not know what they are doing.
Luke 23:34.
Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Luke 23:34. Hello, my name is Carson Wright, and I'm a senior at Hudson High School. I'm involved in National Honor Society, Student Council, track, cross country, and wrestling. I'm not a big fan when it comes to public speaking, so if at some point sound like an 8-year-old girl is talking up here, please bear with me. To whom much is given, much will be required. Luke 12:48. This verse, I would say, is the base of my entire faith. The Lord has blessed me with 2 amazing and supportive parents, 2 brothers whose constant competitiveness brings out the best I can be, a vast and very fun group of friends, a small and very sheltered community, and even 2 5-pound wiener dogs. At first thought, my faith story is one to go directly under the category of ordinary. When Pat Kress approached me to share my story, I instantly thought there has to be someone with a better story than my common one. After reflecting and a little push from God, I would say I'm beyond blessed to actually be considered an extraordinary group. Everyone has their own story written by God, and that is what makes all stories extraordinary. My relationship with Jesus was seeded by my parents at a very young age, and from there I was able to branch out and create my own faith with Jesus. Who would have thought my parents could create the perfect relationship instead of embarrass me out of one, right? Big House was a huge turning point in my faith. Big House is an organization that engages hundreds of kids from all surrounding school districts to build a faith with Jesus and to strengthen that faith through him. I was gifted with 2 astonishing small group leaders at Big House, Pat and Lisa Kress, whose love and passion for Jesus Christ instantly rubbed off on me. They are a perfect example of a relationship evolved and based around God and how strong that relationship can become through that. With their guidance and through others on the Big House team, I was really able to come out of my comfort zone in my faith and in all walks of life. An example of that might be me standing in what feels like 1,000 people and sharing a story I've never really shared before. My faith at this time is growing almost exponentially. The definition of who Jesus is to me is always evolving and growing. The more stories I read and hear, the more amazed I am of my God and how truly great he is. The pain Jesus endured in his last days are hard to even imagine. A God who goes through unimaginable pain with the intent and thoughts of each and every person in this room tonight is the God I've grown to love. I listened to a sermon at Orchard Hill Church where Ed Baker asked 2 questions that were instantly instilled into my head, and I want each of you to consider the answer to these questions. Who do you think gave Pilate the authority and status to condemn Jesus to be crucified on the cross? And who do you think gave the Roman soldiers the strength to drive those nails into Jesus' palm and feet? There was only one, Jesus. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Luke 23:34. They knew not of what they were doing, but Jesus knew exactly what he was doing. He suffered on the cross not only forgive us of our sins, but to one day have a relationship with us. What a God. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. Luke 23:34.
Today, you will be with me.
Today, you will be with me.
You'll be with me in paradise.
You will be with me in paradise.
Today, you will be with me in paradise.
Luke 23:43.
Luke 23:43. Today you will be with me in paradise. Hi, my name is Emily Fischel, and I'm a senior at Cedar Falls High School. In this verse, Jesus is speaking to one of 2 criminals on either side of him as all 3 are being crucified on crosses of their own. They are all nearing their final moments here on earth and most likely shaking with unimaginable fear. When I first read this, what stood out to me was the portrayal of the 2 very distinct responses to personal suffering. The first is very human and easy, and something I have struggled with since I was young. As he hung on his cross, the first thief is said to have been railing against God, basically asking, if you are such a great and powerful and loving God, why am I in this mess? Throughout my elementary and junior high years, I thought as this thief did. For years, I struggled with a relatively severe stutter, which greatly hindered my ability and desire to communicate. Something I will never forget is how frustrating and humiliating it is to know exactly what you want to say, but simply not being able to say it. I learned this as early as the first day of second grade. I had been called upon to introduce myself and open my mouth to speak, but as hard as I tried, no words came out. It required years of speech therapy and summers spent with language pathologists to overcome my stutter and communication anxiety. Yet it left me with a deep-rooted insecurity that I maintained even after I no longer had a speech impediment. And this insecurity in turn led to my difficulty in standing up for myself and saying no in relationships. My feelings of inadequacy, lack of self-worth, and not wanting to disappoint others resulted in going beyond what I was comfortable with, in addition to jealousy, distrust, shame, and lots of guilt. Like the first thief, I have spent countless nights calling out to God, demanding him, if you are an all-powerful and loving God, prove it. The past year in particular, my lack of trust in God escalated. This year, 2 of my best friends were faced with the death of a parent. They were forced to grow up too fast and take on responsibilities no kid should have to at that age. I can never begin to imagine the numbness, the heartache, or the overwhelming grief they experienced, but I have wondered, like the first thief, almost daily, what kind of God would allow this world of disease and death to exist. During the crucifixion, the second thief responded differently to the threat of sin and death than the first thief in me. The second thief cries out for mercy and asks Jesus to remember him when Jesus goes into the kingdom of God. The second thief did not depend on himself. He could only depend on Christ, and that was all he needed. I don't have all the answers, but knowing this, I feel an inexplicable sense of peace. I am not strong enough to climb out of my darkness of sin or shame alone, but with faith like that of the second thief, Jesus offers redemption after death. He acknowledges that on this earth there will be many trials and many sorrows. As much as I try, I can't ignore that, but this promise of paradise evokes hope. My small group leaders, my parents, and experiences like Caravan have helped me realize that when we cry out to God, there will be healing. Tonight, I am leaving my lack of faith during difficult times at the foot of the cross so that today I may be with him in paradise.
My soul sing. The day and its trouble shall come. I know that your strength is enough. The scandal of grace, you died in my place. My soul will live. Oh, to be like you. Give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you. Forever the hope in my heart. Oh, to be like you. Give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you. Forever the hope in my heart. And it's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of your love, and my soul will live. And it's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of you, Jesus. It's all because of your love, and my soul will live. Oh, to be like you. Give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you. Forever the hope in my heart.
Woman, behold your son.
Woman, behold your son.
Behold your son. Behold your mother.
Behold your mother.
Woman, behold your son. Behold your mother.
John 19:26 through 27.
Mother, behold your son, behold your mother. John 19:26. My name is Elizabeth Ralph, and I'm a senior at Cedar Falls High School. I grew up here in CF, the youngest of 4 kids and the daughter of 2 loving parents. I look out into the crowd today, and I see so many people that I don't even recognize, from different towns, schools, and even churches. Personally, I think there's so much power in that concept that often goes overlooked. You see, God brought each and every one of us here tonight for a reason. Now, my story isn't one of tragedies or miracles, but rather one of God working his way into every corner of my life, especially my relationships. From kindergarten through 8th grade, I attended St. Patrick's Catholic School. I wore a plaid skirt and khakis, attended Mass once, most of the time twice a week. My parents, Brian and Teresa, surrounded me with a faith-filled environment, and for that, I couldn't be more grateful. It wasn't until I started attending Holmes Junior High that I realized not everyone learned and recited prayers like I had. In fact, a lot didn't even know God. My journey through public school introduced me to a lot of different people. I had a few boyfriends, I had a few different groups of friends, and most importantly, I had the opportunity to attend different churches. Junior year, I was going through confirmation at St. Patrick's while also attending Candeo Church on Sundays. Conflict quickly arose out of my situation because I wanted so badly to be with my family at one, but I was learning so much about myself and God's character at the other. Neither side understood the other's point of view because it was a different approach to the same faith. I felt like I was constantly in the middle of 2 opposing teams, being tossed from side to side. As if I wasn't confused enough, I signed myself up for the God's Mountain Spring Break trip with Big House. With 3 churches comes a lot of opposing views, but then again, a whole lot of love for Jesus. And that is a powerful thing.
Recently, God has pointed me back to the fact that I've been in this situation for a reason. I wouldn't know my small group leader, Nikki, if it weren't for Big House. I wouldn't have such a strong faith foundation without the Catholic Church, and I wouldn't be as bold in my faith without the things I've learned at Candeo. Now, honestly, I had no business being in a lot of these situations or places, but I could see God's fingerprints all over these new relationships and experiences. You see, God brings unlikely people together. When Jesus was hanging from the cross, he saw his mother and the disciple he loved standing there. He said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour on, the disciple took her into his home. What I find incredible about Christ's character in this moment is that even as he's on the cross dying, he offers humans a word of advice. He tells us, be there for each other. Behold your mother, behold your son, your friends, or your spouse. Now the disciple John wasn't looking for a mother that day, and Mary was grieving over losing her son, so she definitely wasn't looking for anyone either. But like always, Jesus does the unexpected. He tells them, care for each other and look out for each other, which is something that we all need to take to heart. You see, God created us for a relationship. Jesus tells us in Matthew 22:36 to love God and love others. As long as we can find ways to do that, whether it be through prayer, worship, or service, we shouldn't get caught up in the things that just don't matter. Romans 14 acknowledges that humans do things differently because it's just a fact of life. But in the eyes of God, anything that brings him glory and honor is pleasing to him. So who are we to judge the right way to do things? My churches are all extremely different, yet they're all right to God. In this chapter, God tells us, let us not pass judgment on one another any longer, but rather decide never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of a brother. All of the worry over reputation and labels is that stumbling block. So it doesn't matter what church you attend. Heck, I go to 3. And I can testify that at each of these places, I see a passion for Jesus and a fire within people that only God can ignite. So what we need to remember is that we have the same God, the same Christ, and one day we will see the same heaven. So until then, mothers, behold your sons, and sons, behold your mothers.
My God, my God.
My God, my God.
My God, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Why have you forsaken me?
My God, why have you forsaken me?
Matthew 27:46.
Hello, my name is Jay Kramer, and I'm a senior at Cedar Falls High School. Matthew 27:46. My God, why have you forsaken me? About a year and a half ago, on a Sunday afternoon, I had just dropped my friend off from hanging out, and I got a sharp pain in my shoulder. Not knowing what was going on, I brushed it off as I pinched a nerve or something. A few moments later, as I'm driving down University Avenue, my right arm went completely numb. This wouldn't worry me as much if I wasn't driving a stick shift. After a minute or two of driving home, I felt a pop inside my chest, and I felt a pain like someone was stabbing me with a hot knife. It immediately got super hard to breathe. What is happening? This was the only thing that was running through my mind. I started to panic and sped home, running stop signs and a red light. About a mile from my house, my legs started to tingle. When I pulled into my driveway, they went completely numb, and I couldn't breathe. I managed to turn off my car and crawl up my sidewalk to the front door with my left arm. I somehow unlocked my door and crawled down the stairs to my bedroom. I laid there on the floor, struggling to breathe. I tried to call my mom, who had just left for Walmart with my dad, but she didn't answer. I got angry and slammed my phone on the ground. For the first time in my life, I thought I was going to die, right there in my bedroom floor, alone. I laid there thinking for what felt like an eternity before my phone started to ring. It was my mom. "Mom, something is wrong. You need to come home now." I'm not sure she understood exactly what I was saying, because at that point I was coughing up blood and mumbling. But I guess she sensed the urgency in my voice and sped home. I told her not to hang up the phone and then passed out. My God, why have you forsaken me?" I woke up in the emergency room with the doctors telling me that I had a collapsed lung and needed emergency surgery. Having this happen to me, I started to doubt my faith and turn from God. This incident really ruined some chances of playing baseball and football in the upcoming seasons, and any chances of having a fun summer. After a few months of rehab and going to Big House, my faith started to regain its strength, and I started to lean on God more. About a month ago, I found out that I had to have another lung surgery. This news really halted some plans I had made for the summer. Upon finding out this news, I really started to wonder if God had my best interest in mind. I really started doubting my faith and if God was really working in my life. My God, why have you forsaken me?" I again found myself in the abundance of questions that I had thought at the end of my last surgery. I did this right up to the night before my surgery, which was 2 weeks ago. I started thinking about how much has happened to me, and I always seemed to come out better than I was before. Granted, I picked up some scars and bruises along the way. While sitting in my hospital bed, I started thinking that because of the things that have happened to me, I started seeking answers to my questions. I started to lean on God more to answer them. I then realized that God had never turned his back on me. He was with me the entire time. He had his hand on me through it all. In the end, so many wonderful things have happened that I never could have imagined. I then started thinking about my verse and why Jesus said it while he was hanging up on the cross. The reason I think Jesus said this is because the first time ever, God was not with him. And while he was on the cross, he was feeling the weight of all of our sins, past, present, and future, bearing down on him at once. Since God is perfect, God cannot be with sin. And because Jesus was on the cross with all of our sins, God had to turn away. God turned his back on Jesus at that moment so that he would never have to turn his back on us. The one thing I want you to take away from this is God never abandons you. He never leaves your side, no matter what your situation is. Oftentimes, I still have trouble trusting God completely. Tonight, I'm leaving my distrust at the cross. I encourage you that if you have distrust in the Lord, hang it up with me. Leave it at the cross. Thank you.
I am thirsty.
I am thirsty.
I am thirsty.
I am thirsty.
John 19:28.
I thirst. It's such a human, needy thing coming from a perfect Savior. And yet, it's a reminder that while Jesus was perfect, he was also human, just like us. Jesus cried. Jesus got hurt. Jesus felt the pain of all the sins of the world thrust upon him as he died on a cross. Along the way, he begged God to change his plans, to let there be some other way to salvation than through Jesus' death. And yet, he knew what God's plan had been all along. In saying, "I thirst" on the cross, Jesus fulfilled a prophecy meant for the Messiah. While we may not see the purpose in pain, God's plan is perfect. My name is Hallie Spohr. I'm a senior at Union High School, and God's plan for my life has led me down paths I never knew existed. I have always known God as the creator and master of my life, and I'm so grateful for that. I grew up with a mom and dad who loved Jesus and showed me his love through their actions and words. I went to church every Sunday, and I accepted Jesus as my Savior at a young age. But I've always been the kind of person who likes to have a plan. For the longest time, I figured sticking to my life plan was the only way things would turn out the way I wanted them to. God took that notion and flipped it on its head. I don't really know when my mom and dad cultivated a passion for adoption, but in 2008, we began the process of adopting a little boy from Rwanda. I can still remember the day my mom came to my elementary school to show me the first picture of a brown-skinned baby boy in a pink jumpsuit. We brought Cooper home on December 12, 2009. He adjusted really well, and about a year later, my mom and dad told us God had put it on their hearts and minds to adopt again, this time from Uganda. We wanted a girl about 4 years old, but the orphanage we were adopting from had no girls that age. Instead, they told us about a brother-sister pair who needed a family badly. God's plan was proving different than ours, but instead of running from it, we took a leap and held on to him tightly. We brought 3-year-old Caleb and 18-month-old Hannah home on Christmas Eve 2011. Their adjustment was a little more rough around the edges. In fact, 6 years later, they're still adjusting. While my parents were in Uganda, they met a boy named Sam at Hannah and Caleb's orphanage. Sam was born with spina bifida, which made him paralyzed from the waist down, so he's confined to a wheelchair and has several medical needs. My mom and dad were touched by his sweet personality and unwillingness to give up. Sam soon became an obvious part of God's plan for my family. He arrived in Iowa in February 2014, which began a long line of medical fixes and issues. During this time, I started coming to the Rock and the Road at Prairie Lakes Church. I enjoyed the atmosphere where I could worship God with students my age. In my junior year, I was put into a group with 2 amazing leaders, Ellen and Bailey. They invested time and energy into my life and mentored me as I grew closer to Christ that year, building a relationship deeper than the ones I had experienced with previous leaders. I told them about my family's adoption stories and how I wanted to go on a mission trip with a team of other Ugandan adoptive parents in the fall of 2016. But when my Uganda mission plans fell through, I felt disappointed and unsure of what God was doing. Was there not a reason he had given me the same passion for adoption and missions that my parents possessed? Shortly after school got out, I saw Ellen at church. She shared with me that she was going on a mission trip to Kenya in July, and they needed one more person. I begged my mom and dad to let me go. It was an expensive trip, but I wanted to see a part of God's plan for my life. I wanted a view of something bigger than me. Sometimes, God has to knock down human plans so that his better ones can prevail. I was starting to see that. My parents gave their consent. I went to Kenya, and my life was completely changed. Along the way, I laughed, cried, sang, and called out to my God, who amazed me. He united me with a team of Iwan believers and a much larger community of Kenyan believers, an experience that I never could have had on my own. I saw poverty and hardship, but I also saw joy and thankfulness. And I built relationships that in turn built up my faith. Since then, I have started to pray about plans. I'm amazed by the plans God has recently called me to pursue, which are built on his word and rooted in his love. Jesus had plans too. He didn't want to face pain if he didn't have to. I can't blame him. But his love for me and you was so incredible that he gave himself fully to his Father in heaven and his crazy, amazing, beautiful plan.
dead and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life up from the dead. Oh, praise the one who paid my debt and raised this life.
It is finished.
It is finished.
It is finished.
It is finished.
John 19:30.
It is finished. John 19:30. When Jesus said this, he was talking about how he planned to rid all sins of mankind. He was asking for forgiveness from his Father on behalf of all people in the world. My name is McKenna Decker. I'm a senior at Denver High School. I'm involved in the volleyball and dance teams along with the student leadership team. I have a whopping 6 brothers and 5 sisters, some full, some half, and some step, who keep me involved in my family quite a bit. I have been attending Big House since I was a sophomore. Growing up, I attended Sunday school every week at 9 in the morning, followed by church with my family at 10 o'clock. I knew who God was and what he did for me, but I didn't really know what it meant to have a real and solid relationship with him. I thought that God meant you just went to church on Sundays, thought about how to be a better person, and then you went home. Like any other kid, my parents were my biggest role models. My dad and uncles own a dairy farm, so he gave us girls an amazing representation of what it means to work hard and love your job at the same time. My mom spent a lot of time teaching us girls right from wrong. Individually, they seemed to be good people, but I knew that they weren't happy together. My dad was a heavy binge drinker, which really disappointed my mom. Eventually, all of their tension led up to a painful divorce, and my 3 sisters and I were forced to move to Denver, where all of my mom's family lived. I remember developing tons of hatred and hostility for my dad right after the divorce. Why couldn't he be the dad that I always wanted him to be? How could he make my mom feel like she had disappointed her children? Why did he feel like alcohol was just as important as the family? I hated the fact that he demolished my chances of ever growing up with a nuclear family. In the back of my mind, I knew that he felt terrible about the situation, but I always kind of wanted him to know that I wasn't just going to instantly forget about it. My dad chose to attend Alcoholics Anonymous meetings after going through the divorce with the goal of exterminating his addiction completely. The beginning of this process was very challenging because he had to admit that there really isn't a huge difference between being a binge drinker and being an alcoholic. I remember hoping so badly that they were making him become a better person, and they truly were. I started to see his overall attitude towards life progress into a more positive mentality. He even started to host his own AA meeting once a week at our local church in Westgate, Iowa, which only has 207 people in the entire town, or what we sometimes like to call a village. My mom remarried an incredibly hardworking man named Brent in 2013, and I can honestly say that is one of the best things to ever happen to her. Piece by piece, everything started to get put back together. Brent is an absolutely amazing guy who would do anything for my 3 sisters, Briley, Reagan, and Olivia, his daughter Ella, and my now 3 little brothers who are soon to be 3, 2, and 1. My mom has been more happy these past years than any other time I can remember, and for that, I am incredibly grateful. I can't even put it into words. My dad grew in his faith immensely after giving up alcohol. I would catch him buying faith-based books about how to raise daughters, and would find little miniature notepads with Bible verses written in them in our kitchen drawers. He recently reached a milestone of being sober for 9 whole years. God is always standing in your corner, rooting for you, even at your lowest points. He has become a person who I can always rely on for advice or help. God's second chances were especially apparent when my dad remarried last year to a woman named Sharon, who was an absolute angel in disguise. She's the type of person who starts listening to what you say you want in January, just so she knows you'll be smiling from ear to ear when the Christmas season rolls back around. Along with Sharon came 3 new brothers and a new sister. I started to realize at this time that having a blended family isn't such a bad thing after all. It's pretty cool to be able to hear so many different perspectives from my siblings as to how life should be lived. My dad and Sharon, at their wedding reception, my dad stood up and gave a speech that I know I'll never forget. He wanted to make sure that everybody knew who the ushers were during the wedding ceremony. To be honest, I wasn't even really sure who a couple of them were. A strong-headed and tough dad started crying and said, "If it weren't for these men, I probably wouldn't be standing here alive today with 7 beautiful children and a wife." All of the terrible things that I had gone through had led up to that distinct moment. My small group leader is always talking about having these God moments.
And based on my understanding, this is kind of when you realize that God is with you while you are in a certain moment, or when a certain piece of God's story is revealed to you. This was a God moment. I truly felt God's presence. He was so obviously in the room. The joy and happiness in God's heart was shown through the eyes of all the people at the reception who seemed to be celebrating the transformation of my dad's life. If you were to tell my 8-year-old self where my dad would be today, I would have said that this was impossible. As John 19:30 says, "It is finished." Nothing sums up my experience better. Place trust in others who have wronged you and give second chances. God does for you each and every day. With this, I am choosing to leave hostility at the cross. This Easter season, I hope that you can choose to let go of hostility along with me and take a step towards creating a closer relationship with God. I 110% promise you that you won't regret it.
Father, into your hands.
Father, into your hands.
Father, into your hands I commit my spirit.
I commit my spirit.
Father, into your hands I commit my spirit.
Luke 23:46.
Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Luke 23:46. My name is Ethan Hayes. I'm a senior at Cedar Falls High School, and for myself, this isn't always how it was. My entire life, and I mean my entire life, revolved around baseball. When my sophomore year in high school came around, baseball and reality started to become my religion. I sacrificed many relationships, with friends, with family, and most significantly, with Jesus, for the game of baseball. This only continued and became more intense as my junior year approached. The fall of my junior year, I was gone every weekend for a tournament or a camp. This continued into the winter. I was also gone every single weekend for a camp. In my head, I had convinced myself that I was D1 bound. I was going to play Division I baseball. I even had a few walk-on offers, which made things worse. I couldn't help but think about all the glory that would come to myself if my dream of playing Division I baseball became a reality. On August 28th, 2016, God, because he loves me, acted quickly and suddenly on my behalf. I injured my right shoulder diving for a fly ball. I injured myself so badly that my upcoming fall season was over before it had even started, and I had to tell all my interested college coaches that I was seriously injured. Within 2 weeks, all walk-on offers were pulled, and all interested schools had dropped their interest in me. At that point, I had many things running through my head. What would have happened if I would have started one step to my left? What if I didn't think I had to save the day with that one catch? And what if I didn't feel the need to be the superstar of the team for once in my life? I surely would not have been injured, and I would be well on my way to becoming a Division I baseball player. But there were other, more frightening things running through my head. Questions like, what do I do now? What is my life committed to? Where do I place value? And what matters most to me? There were many days, weeks, and even months with stress and anxiety to follow. I tried to find ways to fill the void that baseball had left me. I tried watching games. I tried playing video games. I even tried collecting gloves. None of these things brought me true happiness or joy, and none brought me the true satisfaction that I thought baseball was bringing me. I was really struggling. One day I was especially anxious, and my mom said to me, as much as this sucks, God did it for a reason. He'll put you where he wants you. God used my mother's wise words to slowly change my perspective on this situation and life in general. I spoke at Fields of Faith in October about how God was using my injury to bring me closer to him, while still struggling with God and his purpose for my life. I went back to Wednesday night church group, where God taught me a lot about himself. On Sundays, I stopped just showing up to church to be there, but to actually learn more about God and his love for me. I was learning how extravagant it was that Jesus committed himself to us out of love for us. He was so committed to us that while we were still sinning every day, he marched off to the cross to die for us. I was learning to put all my sins on his shoulders and at his feet. I was learning to commit my life completely to Jesus, not just when it was convenient or when something needed fixing. I was learning that God was taking away my earthly religion of baseball to bring me closer to him. In this, I saw that the suffering I was enduring was something I needed to bring me closer to God. And God used it to help me see God for who he is and not someone who was only there when I was down. He is the Lord and the ruler of all parts of my life. I began to trust that his plan for me was far greater than the plans I had for myself. I was learning that bringing him glory was the purpose of my life, not bringing myself glory. The Lord changed my heart to love him and value him more and more and more, while also showing me that I need to value baseball as a gift from him, not an idol to be worshiped. God knows me better than I know myself, so he knows that to this day, I still struggle with committing my entire life to him. But if there's one thing I know, it's that God is the only thing in the entire universe worth committing my whole life to. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Luke 23:46. Thank you.
I invite you all to stand with me in worship.